Hello, and welcome to my Modlist showcase, where I give an overview and opinion on mod lists to help find the right one for you. This time, we are looking at Fallout 4 Enhanced Edition by AugSpeed. The version I've been playing on is version 1.2.1, released on the 17th of July 2021. You can check the Enhanced Edition Discord for any updates and changes. Firstly, what is Fallout 4 Enhanced Edition? The description reads, a hardcore list made to both expand and deepen the Commonwealth, built around the Horizon gameplay overhaul. Every encounter is deadly, and ammo is scarce. Fallout 4 Enhanced Edition is available to download from the Wabberjack Modlist installer, as well as manual installation from Nexus Mods. While I won't cover the specifics in this video, the installation was incredibly easy, with clear instructions provided. This mod list is one of the more moderate sized mod lists on Wabberjack, with currently having just over 200 mods, so the list plus Fallout 4 comes to around 100 GB. Once in game, setting up the specific mod configurations is quick and easy, again with clear instructions provided. Now for what the mod list adds. For this showcase I'll be showing my lower level character, but I've played many hours on previous versions of this mod list, so I have a good grasp on what it's like to play. Going into the mod list, I wasn't expecting it to be the best looking, as I knew the majority of the mods added were gameplay focused, but honestly I was pleasantly surprised with how nice the game looks. It really shows that with a few well chosen texture and visual mods, it can really modernise the game's look. The weather and lighting is also great, with the main weather mod being True Storms, which you can't really go wrong with. And something I personally really like, although it will be more subjective, is the mod 50 Shades of Rust, which adds a lot more rust onto buildings and objects. It means there's a lot less colours that really pop, but I really like how it emphasises the dreary post-apocalyptic look that we had in Fallout 3. It's also worth noting the performance, which for the most part was good. In most areas, like Sanctuary, I was holding around 60 FPS, but then in some areas like Lexington I dipped down to 30 depending on where I stood. Now to be fair, Fallout 4 has always been unoptimised in towns and cities, plus I know the mod list author is hard at work improving the list's performance. I just thought it's worth noting, so prepare to possibly turn down some graphics options like shadow draw distance. My specs are here on screen, and while I know it's very high end and might not be useful for a lot of people, I was running at 4040p ultra ride, so I'd expect the same performance as I'm getting on say a GTX 1080 at 1080p. Overall, it's not the very best Fallout 4 can look, and there's other lighting and weather mods that I would personally prefer to use. However, it definitely still looks like a better version of the base game, and it does sell the feeling of the world being a post-apocalypse, all while still delivering good performance. Fallout 4 Enhanced Edition dramatically changes a lot of the gameplay, and I can confidently say it lives up to the description of being a hardcore mod list. As an example, I always create two characters when making these showcase videos. One I used to play the mod list as I'd like, so in this case taking it slow on a survival mode character, and on my other character I play on a very easy mode and teleport around getting more scenic shots for the showcase. Well, with this very easy character, I almost died when leaving Vault 111 at the very start, so I think that gives you an indication of how difficult this list is. This list also makes Fallout 4 a much slower game to play, which for me is a good thing. You really need to take the time to scavenge and prepare yourself before heading towards any area that could be hostile. I can't talk about the gameplay changes without talking about Horizon. Horizon is a large overhaul mod that Enhanced Edition uses for many of its difficulty tweaks. I could make a whole video on its own about Horizon, so I'm just going to go over the most notable changes. You can also find Horizon's mod page in the description if you wish to read all the changes, which I advise you do. Healing has had a large overhaul. We're now, instead of finding the traditional stim pack everywhere, which gives a boost of health, there's now a bunch of new healing items with their own specific benefits and downsides. Plus food, water and sleep no longer heal you, so you must use bandages and first aid kits to heal yourself safely when out of combat. This also makes doctors much more useful, which in turn makes caps more useful, which I'm a big fan of. The rarity of loot is now much more dependent on where you find it, so locked containers will provide better loot and such. Plus more scrap items have been added to give more variety to the world when looting. Trading is now much more expensive, especially ammo and healing items, again making it so you don't end up with loads of caps at the end. Settlements have also had a bunch of changes. There's so many new crafting benches like weapons labs for ammo, purification units for purified water, and a tech lab for creating new tools like lock breaks. This makes settlement building incredibly useful, especially early game, but again, like in the base Fallout 4, it's still completely optional. This is all just a taste of the new features that are included, which is why again I highly recommend you read over the new features added from Horizon. As a final note for gameplay, I found that this list is great for roleplaying, not just because it adds roleplay mods like Silent Protagonist, but because the feeling of barely surviving really feels immersive when you're living in this post-apocalyptic land. The first notable change with combat, and what honestly I see as my favourite change, is the fact that now you take a lot more damage, but equally, enemies now take less damage to kill as well. Even though it's very simple, it really changes how you engage in combat and loot around the world. You genuinely worry about enemies hiding around every corner, because being caught off guard could mean a quick death. And being smart before a fight with sneaking in, positioning yourself, can feel really rewarding as you quickly take out a group of raiders before they've even had a chance to react. The vanilla Fallout 4 weapons have also been tweaked, like making submachine guns more powerful, but also new ammo types can be swapped out in your weapons to change the damage and effects. It's also important to be modifying your weapons, especially if you can't afford new ones. The mod Pack Attack has also been added, which improves the enemy AI, so now they'll actually assess their situation and run to cover, advance or flee, depending on the fight circumstance. All of this, including the fact ammo is now a lot more difficult to come across, makes combat something that's very deadly to get into. And so now you might actually think twice before mindlessly walking into a town, like you would in the vanilla game. Fallout 4 Enhanced Edition adds a number of new quests and areas to explore, without going completely overboard. Most of the new areas are just expanding upon what's already in the world. For example, the mods Beantown Interiors and Stumble Upon Interiors both add interiors to existing buildings, making the world feel more natural and alive, rather than finding houses with planks of wood on the front door so you can't get into it. For quests, the mods Tales from the Commonwealth adds a bunch of new NPCs and quests that integrate seamlessly into the world. And larger quest mods like Vault 494 and Wilkes Estate add new dungeons into the world rather than large new lands and areas. I've not had the chance to play larger quest mods, but they seem to be well made with good stories, although they aren't exactly lore friendly, and apparently the list author is still working on completely balancing the new dungeons and items. The audio adds a great ambience to the game, with distant gunshots and explosions cracking through the air, as well as new power armor and ghoul audio. There are also a couple mods that add new tracks into the existing soundtrack, and from the ones I've heard, they all seem to sound good, but of course music is always a personal preference. I think this is a category you best just hear for yourself. Many of the new items in the game are added from Horizon, which I talked about earlier, such as the healing and utility items. But on top of this adds 30 new weapon mods and 90 new armor mods, many of which include a bunch of new armors and outfits within them. All of these have been well chosen and fit into the world, with nothing too wacky and out of place, and most importantly, they've all been tweaked to be well balanced. If you have a certain build and weapon category you prefer, then this list most likely has new weapons for you to find and customize. For some other notable changes, power armor is much harder to find. For example, the first suit of power armor you usually find on top of the museum only has a couple of armor pieces attached. Leveling is now much slower, and most of the perks have been changed to make them more balanced and interesting. To quote the Horizon description, the goal is to make the perks actually feel useful, so that you have trouble deciding which ones to take. And finally, the classic Fallout VAT system has been replaced with a slow motion bullet time. This may not be for everyone, but you could just be like me, where I chose not to use it because I like the challenge. Now for some add-ons you might think about adding to the list, but first I must stress, any changes you make to the list has nothing to do with the Modlist author. You should only do so if you have an understanding of modding and accept that any consequences are yours to deal with. Some of the most popular mods to add are armor and weapon mods. While I haven't tried adding any myself, I'll say that you might find the new item to be quite unbalanced. I wouldn't add any weapon mods that add new ammos, and armor mods that replace factions' armors like the Minutemen, and always be sure to check for any horizon patches no matter what mod you install. As for what mods I added, I only added one new mod, and honestly I can't fully recommend it despite how much I enjoy it. The mod I added was Fall Souls, which makes it so the game doesn't pause when you go into menus. I love how this makes gunfights really intense, as I can't just go into my Pip-Boy and swap weapons while everything freezes around me. However, this mod hasn't been updated for a long while, and it comes with a decent amount of bugs, especially in barter menus. But other than that, I honestly didn't need to install any more mods to satisfy the survival mode feeling. If you're a big fan of survival mode and enjoy a challenge, then this list is absolutely for you. While yes, there's no other large-scale survival lists out there to compare this to, I feel that's because there's not much you can really add to this. Fallout 4 Enhanced Edition not only bundles together tons of key survival-based mods, but it does it in such a way that makes the whole experience feel smooth and balanced. If you're someone who's never really tried a survival playthrough, or really enjoys role-playing, I would honestly encourage you try this list, as while in some games I feel survival mechanics get in the way of the fun, the post-apocalypse setting of Fallout really fits survival mode. It feels immersive and makes sense that you'd be barely scraping by, living day to day trying not to die to some irradiated bug or raiders. However, you do need to be prepared for a much slower, more punishing game, and to actually do research into some of the new mechanics added. It makes the game feel different to vanilla Fallout, not in terms of adding a bunch of new content like the Magnum Opus Modlist, but instead of changing up gameplay and how you interact with the world. If you want a more casual experience, and want to try out a huge variety of Fallout mods, then this list probably isn't the one for you, but if you want that feeling of surviving in the apocalypse, and the satisfaction of slowly overcoming the wasteland, then this list offers everything you could want and more. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like, as it helps the channel grow. And if you have any lists you want me to cover, feel free to tell me in the comments. I also have a Twitch where I tend to play some relaxing games, so if you want to join me there, feel free. And other than that, thank you for Christian Howell for being my Patreon supporter. Thank you, and farewell.